Hey guys, so now we are in the fifth video of our mini course to build a water reminder app. In the last video, we saw how to set the navigation bar to make it work. So now we're going to do something really exciting, which is we're going to deal with the dialogues. So in this video, we will have a single focus, which is we want to make this dialog work. And this dialog will be called when the user click on this button to add a custom amount. So let's say you did drink 250. So you cannot add this here. So we want to make a way for the user to input a custom amount. So let's start by looking in the dialogues. So in the first video, Ludo showed you already how to design this alert dialog. But as a recap quickly, let me make like a dirty one on the side. So you can just drop an empty alert dialog. Let's resize it, and then you can customize it. So here on the right side, you can have the title to write it down. And here there's something called content. And here it's like, what do you want to be the main content? I can choose a single widget, let's say image, or I can choose a component as well. Now, in the button, you can also add action. So let's say I added this action, and I want this action to be a button. And then here I just made a really quick alert dialog. And you can see that the colors being taken from the themes. Now, let's go back to our dialog. So here, the first thing I'm going to do, because I noticed that this is not a component, we need to set it as a component. And the first thing is I want to display that dialog when the user click on this button. So to do that, your dialog has to be a component. You will see very soon why. So here I selected the dialog and then I clicked on this button to create a component out of it. And I'm going to call it custom amount dialog. Submit. So after I created the component, I will then just go back to the home screen. And then remember that we switched this to be index tagged. And now we have 3 components in this screen. So to be able to deal with the home component, I would rather not to try to deal with it here, because here I'll have the index tagged widget covering all of it. So to do that, I will need to drop the component itself, which is the home component that we created in the last video, on the side. And here I will just play with the component without being bothered with the other widgets in the index tag. So I will select this button that when the user clicks on it, the dialog will appear. And I will add a gesture detector. Now you should be very professional in adding gesture detectors, because we've been doing this all in the past videos. Now inside on tab here, I will call a function called show dialog. And this will just show a dialog. And then here in the builder, I can select my dialog. So I made my dialog a component. So when I click on pick widget, I can see it. And here inside components, I can now see my component custom amount dialog. That's it. So now if I click on play, okay, now I'm playing on the component itself, but it should work as well. I can see here the pop-up, the dialog. Now, the thing is, when you click on play, whatever you select will play. So if I'm selecting the home component, I click on play, I will see the component only. But if I'm not selecting anything, and I click on play, I will see the home screen. So now in the home screen, I can also see the dialog. But now this doesn't work, so let's now make it work. Let's go back again to the dialog. Where is it? Here is it. By the way, if you couldn't find what you're looking for, just go to the outline, double click on what you're looking for, and it will take you to it. Now, what I have here is I have the dialog, and inside I have another component, which is the slider water. And the slider water is a component, and I choose that component to be the content here of the alert dialog. So now we need to focus a little bit, because here it might get a little bit tricky. So what I need to do in a nutshell is the user can change the slider to pick an amount, and then when the user click on confirm, this amount will be added to the water state. So in a nutshell, it's very simple that I will need in the beginning a variable called amount, and this amount will be integer, and this is the amount that I will send when the user click on confirm. But then the problem is, in this slider, which is the insider component, is where I need to change that amount. So the amount itself, which is a variable, lives in the upper component, which is a dialog. But I need to change it from inside. And this is the perfect case for callbacks. So in a nutshell, what I'm going to do is I will pass the amount I have here to the inner component using a parameter. So I will create a parameter for the inner component, and this parameter through this parameter, I will pass the amount here to the inside. And then from inside, I will display the number here. And then here, when the user change the slider, I will call a function that is made in the upper component, which is the dialog, to change the amount from the upper component that then will be sent again to the inner component. If you don't get what I'm talking about right now, let's start implementing this. So the first thing is I will create a parameter for the inner component, and I will call it amountParam. And this will be an integer. And like the default value will be 0. And then what I'm going to do here in the text, I will connect it to the amount parameter. And since the amount parameter is an integer, but this requires a string, I will convert it to a string. And then I will go to custom expression and add milliliter next to it, as we've been already doing in the last videos. So now we have this number being displayed from the amount param. And then let's focus a little bit on the slider. So the slider is a slider widget. In the details panel here, let me close the variables panel. I can see here the properties to play with the UI of the slider, whether it's about the size or the colors. But let's focus on the last 4 fields, because this is where it gets functional. I can set the minimal value, the maximum value, and the current value of the slider. And then I can set a function that will be called every time the user change the value. So the minimum value, let's say I will make it 0. The maximum value, I want it to be 1000, which means that the user can set a custom input from 0 to 1000. Now the value here, which is the current value, if I just write down 500, it will be the half. Now I can also here keep sliding it, and I can see the slider move on both sides. Now here I can pass a function that will change the value. But the thing is, the value I want to change, which is the amount, it doesn't exist in this component. It exists in the upper component. Because in the end, I don't want to change the amount parameter. I want to change the amount variable in the bigger component, because when I click on confirm, this is the one I will send. I cannot access the variables that exist in the inner component from the outer component. Like if I click on confirm, I cannot make confirm brings the amount param from the inner component. But what I can do is I can pass a function, which is the term of callback. I can pass a function from the upper component to the inner component, and this function will be used from the slider. When the user change the value, this function will be called, and this function will change the amount in the bigger component. And then also it will call refresh in the bigger component. So it will make the bigger component pass the new value again to the inner component using the amount param. So it's like a loop. But let's now build it, and then you will understand. So we have here the function in the slider, which is onChanged. But because I want it to be a callback, I will set it as a parameter, and I will call it onChanged callback. And then here inside the bigger component, on the right side, I can see what I can pass to the inner component. So I can see the amount. So when I change the amount, it changes. Actually, I just noticed that since I'm passing here the new value, it's changing, but it's not updating in the slider. And this is because we forgot to connect the amount parameter to the value. So this value will not be a fixed number. It will be the amount parameter that I'm passing to the component. Okay, so now if we go back to the dialog here, I can pass a value and I can say the slider change. But then I can pass a function. So let's open now this function. Now, this parameter, which is the P0, is the new value that the user selected from the slider. And I want this new value to be the amount of the dialog, which is this one. So here, since I'm implementing the function from the outer dialog, not from the inner dialog, I have access to the variables in the outer dialog, which is the amount that I want in the end to change. So let's go back again, and I will implement the callback. And what I want to do is I want to go to locals, and I want to set a new value for the amount. And I want it to be the P0, which is passed from the function. Now P0 is a double. The amount is integer. So what I can do is I can keep it the same, or I can round it. So when I round it, the double will be rounded to the closest integer. And now here I will call refresh. So now what's happening is I am implementing a function that will change the amount in the bigger component, and it will refresh also the bigger component, but it will be sent to the inner component through the parameter onChanged callback, and then it will be called when the user switched the dialog. So now let's play it in action. And now when we click on play, we will find out that it doesn't work, and this is because we forgot one thing. We forgot to pass the amount to the parameter. So here I have now in the bigger dialog, I have the amount, which I'm changing in the end, but I'm not passing the new value again to the inner component. So I will do that. So instead of amount parameter being 142, I will pass the amount that is changing. And now when I click play, now let's select dialog, click play. And now we can see, now it's working. So what's happening is when I change the slider, I am calling the function that was created in the bigger component, but was passed to the smaller component through the parameter. And this function in the end changes the amount in the bigger component and refresh the bigger component. When it refreshes the bigger component, it also passes a new value to the smaller component through the parameter, which sets the text here and also sets the slider value to be the recent value. So now when we go to confirm, we can now implement the logic that will add this custom amount. So I will access the water state, and then here inside in the plus, I will call the function that we created in the second video called add water log. Now this function expects an amount to be added to the water state. And this amount will be the amount that I have in the bigger component, which is a dialog. So now I'm adding this amount to the bigger dialog. Now also, before I add it, I want to just be sure that the value is changing. So I can simply print the new value. And in the message here, I will just connect the amount and I will convert it to a string so I can see it. So now when I click on play in the dialog, if I open the logs here, okay, if I click on confirm, the log will show the value that I will send. So if I click on confirm now, I can see 0. If I change it here to like 499, click on confirm, I can see the number, which means it's getting updated correctly. And now since I'm sure about that, I can simply, instead of just printing the value, I can send the value to the water state. So I will go to globals, pick my state, and then here call the function add water log, and then the amount that I will send will be the amount variable that I have in the dialog. Okay, now let's play the app itself. And when I click on plus, I will see the dialog. I can then change the value and I can click on confirm. I can see in the background the number changed, but as I can see here, the dialog still, when I click on confirm, I want the dialog to just disappear. So let's do that. Let's go back again to the functionality of the confirm. So after adding the water log, I want to pop the pop-up. So I will just call the navigator function that I can find under globals, and this navigator, I can then choose pop. Pop, it just removes the route, which can be the new screen or the component like the dialog from the route, and this will make it just disappear. Also, if you do this on a normal screen, the screen will just disappear and the screen behind it in the route will be then visible. So now I just choose pop. So when I click on play again, and then I click on plus, I want to add 274, confirm. Now the amount went away, and I can see now the total amount being 274, and I can also find it here in the daily logs. I can then add another amount like 777, then both were added here because it's been added to the total water intake I have in the global state, and then here I can also see the amount was added in this time. Amazing. So now we're done with the dialog, and then in the next video we're gonna set the daily goal. So we will have the user to set the daily goal using the alert dialog, and also then we can do the calculation here to see how much remaining in a day to hit the goal, and also we can change this progress bar to show how close are you to hit your goal. So guys, remember, keep drinking water, stay hydrated, and stay healthy beside building great apps. Let's Now continue and see you in the next video.